All right, folks. So this one will be a little bit more about a discussion of a pretty prevalent topic when it comes to people ask a lot. What should my first gun be, right? And this was kind of it made me think a little bit because this I saw a couple other videos talking about this recently, and it kind of got me thinking because it's a question I get a lot from a lot of people getting into guns for the first time for whatever reason, right? I don't usually ask what reason that is because to me it doesn't really matter. But yeah, and I realized I didn't really I don't have like a set kind of thing, a set answer to give to people because the answer, well, is it depends, right? As a lot of good answers are. But there are a few things I think that people can take into account for deciding on their first gun, really, and where that first gun can go, right? So some of the big factors to consider, of course, are budget. Because you can say all day long, yeah, you should get the greatest, latest, awesomest, most expensivest gun ever, and it'll suit all your purposes just fine, which is probably true. However, you have to look at it from the perspective of people who are just getting into this, right? So, they may not have really an idea of just how much some of these guns can cost. When I told my sister, for instance, that there was a pistol that cost $5,000, just like a Staccato XL, she didn't believe me. She's like, no way, a gun costs $5,000, and I'm like, yeah, but you've got like designer bags that cost like $7,000, and I look at that and it looks like a regular bag to me. So, right? So she kind of got the point after that. But anyway, so yeah, first concern is budget, right? The second is what they want to do with it, and the reason why I don't usually ask that question too often anymore either is because a lot of people don't really know how to answer that question. They have an idea up here, but they haven't quite necessarily like internalized it, verbalized it, thought about it too much. They just know that they need to get a gun. Now, in most cases, it tends to be they want it for home defense, self-defense, concealed carry, something like that, right? Most people are going to get it for those purposes. Most people do not actually get into the hobby of saying, I want to be a sport target shooter, right? Most people don't do that these days. And it doesn't really offend me, I guess, or anything, because that's the majority of what my shooting is like sport target shooting, right? Sure, because that's how I got into it. My dad raised me that way, but and then of course the defensive and practical side just came after the fact. I started living by myself, and I was like, well, I'm solely responsible for my safety, so I better have the right equipment and tools, training to do that. So, but anyway. So those are the two major factors I think of is budget and what they want to do with it. Now, again, when I come to like an instructor perspective of this, I have to see it from their side and kind of remember how I was too when I first got into guns and what I've seen from people in my experience, right? How they kind of approach this subject. So I typically like to recommend, if people have the time, capability, and money to afford it, is to start out with something like this. This is a Ruger Mark IV, a 2245 Mark IV to be specific, and this stems a lot from my experience with the Ruger Mark II pistols, which are the pistols that I grew up shooting, that taught me the fundamentals, the basics, and allowed me to get tons and tons of practice for pistol shooting. Now, the reason why I recommend these is because these things are awesome. I have trained so many people on this actual Mark IV and my Mark IIs before I got my Mark IV. And these things are just absolutely fantastic. I mean, they're reliable, they're accurate, they look cool. There's so many different models out there that you can, the sky's the limit for what you can do with these things. And that's something I kind of like about these as well, is that you can absolutely shoot them all day long with just the iron sights, or you can go crazy and put an optic on here like me. So in terms of value, I think these are just way up there in terms of value, right? So because I like shooters to have the ability to kind of go as far as they want to with their weapon of choice. Because if it's the only pistol they have, or like one of two of three maybe that they have, it's kind of a good thing to be able to expand upon their skill set as they develop, or if they want to investigate more things, or if they want to try shooting with a red dot, or they just want to stick with irons, or they want to stick with only a red dot, right? Having the option is really something to consider as well, because most people are not going to be going out there buying 3, 4, 5, 6 pistols or rifles for that instance, right? They'll be 1 or 2, 3 maybe at the most, right? Most people tend to be that way, and there's nothing wrong with that. So in terms of if they're going to have a limited amount, it's best to get something that's very flexible and but also practical. So um, there's so much to recommend for a 22, and really the Mark IV is just my favorite choice for it. It's not perfect necessarily because the manual of arms do not necessarily represent like your conventional striker fired pistols. So like your Glocks, for instance, right? The manual of arms is going to be a little bit different because the Mark IV, of course, doesn't have a slide. It has the bolt here that you pull back. But magazine release, um, the bolt release, bolt catch here, safety. I mean, that is mostly universal for a lot of pistols, a lot of other weapons. So no big deal there. But yeah, it's just the weird part with pulling the bolt back like that. That's the only manual of arms difference really that comes into effect with training isms, right? So, but there are a lot of other 22 pistols out there that can more reliably mimic or pattern after your conventional striker-fired pistols. Like there's a Taurus TX22, Walther P22, Walther PPQ22. I mean, Smith & Wesson 22. There's so much out there, right? There will be most likely a 22 pistol that mimics the manual of arms for the full-size pistol, 9mm whatever pistol that person wants to train on. But in general, I still think the Mark IV is a very, very nice do-all, catch-all kind of pistol. So, and I have never received any complaints from anybody shooting one of these things. Like everybody loves a good, Mark series pistol. So that would be my first recommendation. And the reason why I say that too is because 22, of course, is the cheapest to shoot. So getting those reps in, getting that those fundamentals down, the muscle memory of putting your mags in, magazine release, bolt release, safety on off, right? Sight picture presentation, the number of rounds you can put down range for the cost. There's nothing that even comes close to 22 in that aspect. So, and really with this it's just getting the reps in, right? So that's why I really do recommend getting a 22 as the first gun, because after that you can kind of explore your options and really see what else is out there that kind of fits what you like. But indoor rental ranges or whatever range that you have available to you that has rentals, or someone else who has a particular pistol you want to try or something, that's great. That's it's always great to be able to try before you buy, of course, and if you can, you should. But as far as like owning something, getting the reps down, getting everything down right, Mark IV, excellent way to go. I don't think you can go wrong with any of the Mark IV models, honestly. I mean, this particular one has served me very, very well. It's got some untold thousands of rounds through it. I have no idea, probably more than 10,000 at this point. But yeah, it just works. It's very accurate. I've trained so many people on this. It's just a lot of fun. And that's the other part too. It should be fun. So way too often I see too many people that their first gun is like some subcompact tiny little thing. They get like a 365 or God forbid a Smith & Wesson J-frame with the pink grips for their girlfriend or their wife or something, right? Because the boomer at the shop told them that, oh, little lady, you better get that J-frame, right? We've all been there. Small guns suck to shoot, period. Like they are just not very fun, which will lead me into my next category of pistol that you should probably look at, other than a 22 trainer pistol like this, provided of course someone has the budget for it, is to get into something like a full-size service pistol. And what do I mean by that? So I got plenty of examples here. So one of my personal favorites, of course, is the Beretta M9 or any 92 series pistol. I absolutely freaking love these things, of course. I have scored expert with these things multiple times, and yeah, these things are awesome. Now, of course, these are DASA guns also as well, like a SIG P226, although I'm kind of loath to recommend SIG these days. The older 226, 22 whatever models of pistols tend to be pretty okay though, so if you can find one used, yeah, you'll be doing all right. And this one was used as well when I bought it, so not supporting SIG in that way. So, but anyway, yeah. So these are your more conventional, older style service pistols that are DASA, so double action, single action, right? So they got a hammer back here. You can, subsequent shots will be on single action after the first double action shot. They usually have a decocker, cool. And the reason why I recommend these is because these things are absolutely proven. I mean, 226s and M9s, Beretta 92s have been used for decades, and to great effect. So, I mean, heck, I deployed with one of these things. So, No big deal there. And other than just the sheer combat reliability of these things is also the fact that they're big, right? So a bigger pistol is actually much easier to shoot. Of course, depending on someone's hand size and finger length and how thick their fingers are too, really determine exactly what kind of pistol that they want to get. But barring all that, of course, I'm just speaking in generalities here. The other thing I kind of shy away from people are like, well, you don't want them on a DASA gun. You want them on a striker gun, like a Glock, right? And the reason why they say that is because, well, the trigger pull is consistent every single trigger pull, which, okay, sure, it is. However, I don't like to insult people's intelligence, and they say like, oh, well, it's too hard for them to learn the double action pull on these guns. And it's like, well, think about the kind of people that are saying those kinds of things. Usually it's cops and military, okay? That, for the longest time, M9s have been hated by the military members because they absolutely cannot, for some unfathomable reason, they cannot understand the double action pull of this pistol. It is absolutely something you can learn. I mean, I learned it, right? Tons of other people have learned how to shoot accurately and well with the first trigger pull being your double action, of course, right? So I won't insult people's intelligence and say that they absolutely cannot learn this and it's so impossible and it's so difficult to shoot these things. I don't think so. With the proper training and understanding what you're doing, there's absolutely no issue with double action, single action guns. So, but if you want to skip all that together, or someone does actually think it's a bit too intimidating for them, okay, fine. Let's move to the striker-fired service pistol line of things. And of course, you can't get away from the ubiquitous Glock, right? Now, the reason why I don't really like recommending these as a first gun is because, frankly, I think the triggers, ergonomics, and everything else on Glocks kind of suck. I don't really enjoy shooting them all that much. I mean, there's maybe 2 or 3 Glocks that I actually do like shooting, but this one is not one of them. This is a Glock 22 Gen 4, and this was a police trade-in gun, so it has the heavier police trigger in it too, which is not great, but it does work, okay? It shoots well enough. I can make it work. I mean, this is my nightstand gun, right? So it will do the job, but in terms of the ease of shooting, the niceness of shooting, the pleasantness of shooting, the fun, right? I don't think you can really get that with Glocks, honestly. I mean, to me personally, these things also look kind of ugly. So there's not really a whole pride and ownership with these. It's just kind of, it's your generic McPistol, right? Everybody's got these. It's like driving a Toyota Camry, right? Sure, it'll get you from point A to point B, but you're not going to tell anybody at work or any of the rest of your friends, hey, dude, I got a Toyota Camry. You want to see it? Nobody thinks that, right? It's the same thing with the Glocks. If you say oh, dude, I got this badass Glock, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Now, if you want to get into something nicer, okay, something better, I think. Wow, look at that, HK VP9. I absolutely love this gun. Fantastic. This was my competition gun for a very, very long time. And I got this right when they first came out. So this is a very early model of VP9, which of course I changed out the sights, which, by the way, I will take credit for this a little bit, is their the long versions and the match versions, of course, have the LPA sights, and they have the exact same setup that I do. So I did this before they even came out with those models. So, just goes to show you, I know a little bit of what I'm doing here. But anyway, the reason why I say this is better is because the ergonomics are better. I personally like the Paddle magazine release here on these HKs. It's pretty common for them to have those, and the trigger is fantastic. So I absolutely love the triggers on these. Awesome. And I think they should look a little bit cooler. The grips here kind of remind me of a P30. And a lot of the reviews they said back then, for P30s and stuff, oh, it's got the Batman grip. It's got the Batman grip. And I never really understood what that meant, but hey, I think it looks a little bit cooler and nicer than a Glock does. So, just for comparison's sake, right? Let's see, get that there. So yeah, this is a block. This is nice little curves and nice little cuts and everything. But yeah, there's that. Now, the other option you can choose too, of course, there's plenty of striker-fired options out there, but these are just the ones that I prefer. You can go crazy with something like this. This is a Walther PDP, also an earlier model, but as you can see, I've got the optic on there from Gideon, which is like an SRO, kind of cheap Chinese knockoff. And then, of course, I got my light down there as well. But everything else about this thing is pretty much stock, so it's just these things are just so ergonomic. The triggers are so good on them. I think they're a little bit oversprung when it comes to the recoil spring and everything else, but I mean, this thing is just crazy, crazy good. No reliability issues either, and I think honestly it looks pretty cool even with those crazy like slide cuts in here. They call it like Walther's got a special marketing term for them, whatever. It's like all-terrain serrations or something like that. I don't know. It's like, dude, I'm buying a gun. I'm not buying an ATV, right? But anyway, so these things are another fantastic option for a striker-fired pistol for a first-time buyer. Like if this was going to be like their one and only pistol, I really think that somebody would definitely enjoy the trigger, the ergonomics, the shootability of a PDP, and like I mentioned earlier, it also has the adaptability factor, the flexibility, where if you really wanted to, you can just stick with the irons, sure. I mean, they're just like 3 dots, which I think they're actually Glock pattern size, which I think is pretty funny that Walther would do that, but hey, if it works, right? Or you can trick it out like this, and you can put your favorite optic on there and a light and do all those things and have it be a dual gun and take it as far as you know somebody's willing to take it with their experience level, right? I mean, heck, even when I first took this out with just the irons, you know, my very first 5-round group, I got a 2-inch group at 25 yards standing with this, and I was just like, well, that's it, wrap it up, call it a day. So this thing is phenomenally accurate, very, very fun to shoot. I think in some cases it's actually even more fun to shoot than my VP9. Like, just, you know, how easy it is to shoot this very, very well. Because we all like to be accurate. We all like to hit what we're aiming, right? Like that's fun. It's fun to be able to hit the target that you're aiming at, right? So in that term, those terms for fun, I think a PDP like this is a excellent first, maybe even only gun purchase that somebody could make. But that's more on the striker fired side of the house. For some things that you don't want to do for your first one, like I said, also is super duper small guns, like your 365s. I guess you could argue 365 XLs or like the macro. Kind of go more into that more shootable factor because they are a little bit larger, but I still wouldn't recommend those as a first or maybe only gun that somebody gets. Another thing you want to avoid is something like this. Of course, this is a 1911, right? Big old honking piece of steel, 45 ACP, as God intended. But it's not something I would recommend to a new shooter at all in any way, shape, or form, because the light triggers of these, the single action nature of these, is it definitely takes a little bit more skill, I think, to shoot these properly. And also, too, the manual of arms is not similar to anything else. So it's not a DASA, right? It's not a striker-fired gun. So there's a little more things you have to take in mind or take into account for someone who's new. And, of course, to the manual safety here as well. I still don't understand why so many people have an issue with manual safeties. And I see this all the time when I shoot with friends or anybody else, somebody at the range. And then you hand them something like this. And, of course, you might hand it to them with the safety on. How many times I've seen they go up to draw and they do this, you know, and they're just like, oh, why's the gun not working? I'm like, well, the safety's on, dude. And he's like, oh, yeah, safety, yeah. You know, I just don't understand why people have issues with that. But maybe it's because I grew up with that. To me, it's totally natural to flip that thing off and go to town. But, again, the inherent benefits of having a 1911 do not necessarily make a whole lot of sense for someone who's new to shooting or is looking for their first gun, right? And, I mean, it looks cool. Like 1911's like absolutely fantastic. Like this is such an aesthetic gun, right? But the limited capacity, the manual of arms, mode of operation, everything like that is really not too conducive to a first-time shooter. Because what you're going to see, and I see this all the time, not just with 1911s, but also like big caliber pistols, is anticipation and flinch and inability to shoot these things worth a damn, to be honest. So typically I see this with guys who bring their girlfriend or wife who's usually much smaller than them, and you know, they'll hand them something like this and say, oh babe, just shoot it, man. Babe, yeah, it's totally fine, yeah, right? And you know, her hands are teeny tiny and she can't even hold it up here, right? She's holding it kind of like this, and it's going all over the place, right? And even some dudes, you'll see that they anticipate the recoil so much, because the recoil can be pretty significant on something like this, even with 45. It can be a little much depending on your loads, but you'll see a lot of anticipation a lot of dipping down like this, and it just ruins the shooting experience for people. It's not fun. They're not hitting what they're trying to hit, even at 7 yards. It looks like a shotgun pattern, right? It's just it's not very conducive to having a good time. And if you're not having a good time, you're not going to want to keep shooting, right? So that's just really the reality of it. So do not recommend 45 1911s for anyone's first gun or only gun that they're going to have. Maybe later down the line when they get a little more experience, they want to try something different. Then 1911 could come into effect that way, but definitely not as the first one. So I would also lump revolvers into that as well, because the manual of arms is so much different. I really like to teach people with the most general skill set, so that way they can kind of branch out on their own and kind of explore what's out there, right? So that's why I really like 22 pistols, like your Mark IVs, your classic service pistols, DASA guns like this, full-size guns, usually 9mm, and then of course the ever ubiquitous striker-fired, polymer-framed, whatever caliber, usually 9mm as well. And that will give people like the widest breadth of experience to really understand just how these pistols work. And I still stick with pistols mostly too, instead of rifles, because if you can get your pistol skills down, you can get rifles down. If you can get rifles down, it doesn't necessarily translate to pistol. I've definitely seen that. And I believe Pat McNamara also has the same opinion. If you train a lot with pistols, you're probably going to be pretty good with rifles. If you train exclusively with rifles, you're probably not going to be too good with pistols. It's squares and rectangles kind of relationship. So in that way, of course we have to go back to budget and what they want it for, right? If somebody only has about $500 to spend and they can only have one gun essentially, and they want it for kind of a do-all kind of gun, home defense, maybe practice a little bit with it, have some fun with it, go out with their friends and shoot something, then they should probably just stick with like your conventional run-of-the-mill polymer frame striker fired 9mm. That is the easiest thing to recommend. Heck, even I saw a deal for the PDPs the other day that was like $400 for this exact model, not including the optic and everything else, of course, but just the base gun, right? $400 for this, that's a heck of a deal, man. I certainly paid more than that for mine, but then again, I also bought it when it was brand new, so I was paying the new gun tax, as it were. But that would of course be the easiest option for somebody in that situation where they can only have one gun, they got a limited budget, and they just kind of want a do-all kind of gun. Now, if you have someone who has a little bit more money on their hand, or they got a little more time, or they really do want to start investing a little bit more into the hobby of it and trying to improve their personal skills, and they take it a little bit more seriously, then yes, 100% start them off with a Mark IV or other 22 target pistol of your choice. I personally recommend Mark IVs again for all the reasons I mentioned before, because Mark IVs are awesome. Start them off with a 22, and then at that time you can kind of explore a little bit more and hopefully get them introduced to all the different pistols that I've shown here, and just see what the person likes, right? So or see what you like, because everyone's hands are going to be different. Like I don't like Glocks personally, but I know plenty of people out there who absolutely love them, and they'll look at something like an HK like this and they'll scoff and be like, oh well, you're Mr. Moneybags over there, you think you're too good for me because HKs or whatever. But then I pull out a Walther like this, and they've never even heard of this brand before, or like Smith & Wesson or something like that, right? And you hand it something like this, and it has fantastic trigger, great ergos, everything, awesome. And just give them the whole rundown, and find a range that maybe has a couple of rentals, and just see what they gravitate towards, because everyone's going to be different, right? So, but again, I like to train people with the most kind of generic skill set, so that way they can shoot as many things as they want, as well as they can hopefully do for themselves, and get the practice in for the fundamentals and things like that. Of course, having a good instructor makes a huge difference as well, or just having somebody that has a little bit more experience to shoot with you makes a huge difference. Because if you're trying to learn all this stuff by yourself, it can be a little intimidating, I will say. Because if you don't know what you don't know, it's kind of hard to break out of let's say you've kind of plateaued a little bit in skill, and you're not quite sure what you need to change about what you're doing to get up to that next level, right? at least for me anyways, whenever I've reached that plateau, I've kind of reached out and seen what other people have done. More competitive shooters than me, better skilled shooters than me, which there are a lot of, and see what they're doing, right? See what they recommend. And then try to incorporate a little bit of that into my own training and see how it turns out. So for me personally, like I don't take everything, from one instructor 100%. I do absolutely everything that he says from start to finish. I usually take the best parts of what he says that works well for me and integrate it into my own methods to improve my own shooting. And then, my whole style and everything is really just an amalgamation of a bunch of things, the best things that I think put together to create something that works for me. And I think everyone else should be kind of in the same kind of mindset about that. So, more exposure is always good, I think. So if you can, show them all these kinds of cool things, and maybe somebody will find something they really, really gravitate towards. I mean, like I said, I personally like the M9. A lot of service members hate this pistol. I love it to death, and but that's just me. So, I hope that kind of addressed this kind of topic of what your first pistol should be, and for people who have either limited budget or don't want to buy that many guns or whatever, hope that kind of put a little bit more of the mentality kind of behind it, and how one, how a person who's looking into this should approach it, and two, if you like being a good friend and everything, how you can help them out, and hopefully everyone arrives to a nice happy spot where they're having fun shooting. First off, because everyone knows the first rule of gun safety is to have fun, right? Joking, of course. Have fun shooting, enjoy what you're shooting, be able to hit what you want to hit, and ultimately, the name of the game, the goal is to be as accurate as possible, as fast as you can be, right? And it's always an unreachable, perfect achievement. But the more you can work up towards that, the better. So with whatever platform of your choice that you have access to, the resources and time able to practice and do those things. So anyway, I hope that was helpful and kind of made you all think a little bit about at least my mentality behind how I would approach a question like that. And if it helps anybody, then hey, that's great, and I've done something awesome, so something good. But just something to think about, and something I have been thinking about. So cool. And with that, we'll see you next time.